You know that person in your life who just can't stand mayo? Call them traumatized. Call them closed-minded. We get it. They're stuck in their ways. But here's the thing. They just haven't tried Hellmann's flavored mayo. We're talking bold flavors that will flip even the biggest skeptics. Spicy mayo that adds the perfect kick to your burger. Garlic aioli that transforms ordinary fries into something extraordinary. Chipotle mayo that turns your basic wrap into a smoky sensation. So to all the mayo haters out there, yes, we're looking at you. It's time to eat your words. Because with mayo this flavorful, any hater is just a mayo lover waiting to be convinced. Hellmann's flavored mayo. Get ready to eat your words.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. Today's episode is about American Prince JFK Jr., a CNN original 3-part docuseries. From the moment he was born, John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. was a living piece of American history. The son of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy and First Lady Jacqueline Lee Bouvier Kennedy, he spent his earliest years in the White House, a toddler playing under his father's desk while the world looked on. Then came the unimaginable, the assassination of President Kennedy on November 22, 1963, and the image that would forever define him, a 3-year-old boy in a short coat saluting his father's casket. For the rest of his life, that image followed him. People spoke of his easy charisma, his movie star looks, and a warmth that could instantly disarm anyone he met. To many, he seemed both part of history and refreshingly modern, the embodiment of the Kennedy promise, but without the stiffness of politics. The media was endlessly fascinated by him, chronicling everything from his career moves to his private morning jogs through Manhattan. He learned to navigate that attention with a mix of charm and guardedness, giving just enough to keep the public enchanted while fiercely protecting his private life. He studied at Brown University, traveled to India, and worked as an assistant district attorney in New York, carving out a professional path of his own. But it was after the tragic death of his mother that he found a new calling, the launch of George magazine. George was unlike any political magazine before it. It aimed to blur the lines between politics and popular culture, making politics accessible and even stylish to a new generation. With iconic covers like supermodel Cindy Crawford, posed as George Washington, and provocative features on figures like Madonna and George Wallace, the magazine was John's way of reshaping how America saw politics with a fresh, irreverent voice. In 1996, John married Carolyn Bessette in a secret ceremony on a remote island in Georgia. At a time before social media, they managed to keep the wedding hidden from the relentless media spotlight, protecting a rare moment of privacy. But the pressures of public life were relentless. By the summer of 1999, John was facing immense challenges: a cousin dying, marital strains fueled by constant paparazzi attention, and George's future was uncertain. Then, on a foggy July night in 1999, tragedy struck. Piloting a small plane from New Jersey to Martha's Vineyard, John F. Kennedy Jr. lost control in thick haze over the Atlantic, and the plane plunged into the water. In the days that followed, pieces of the wreckage and John's personal belongings, his luggage among them, washed ashore near the Kennedys' family compound in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, a place deeply tied to his mother's legacy. The sight of those scattered remnants on the shore brought the heartbreaking reality of his loss painfully close to home. The nation mourned the sudden end of a life that had carried the weight of history, hope, and his own dreams, and with it, the fragile promise of what might have been. American Prince JFK Jr. is an intimate and revelatory portrait of John F. Kennedy Jr. composed of interviews with family members, close friends, and collaborators, as well as journalists, authors, and historians, and features extensive archival footage spanning decades of American history. This three-part series peels back the layers of one of America's most iconic and beloved figures. From the moment he saluted his father's coffin, JFK Jr. became an inspirational symbol of nation's future. Despite the societal and familiar pressures that plagued him, John F. Kennedy Jr. was determined to escape the shadows of his family and define his own path. Rejecting a political career as a young man, he launched George as a new kind of political magazine that blended celebrity and politics, and it felt like a role that he was born for. Now, I've done several episodes about the Kennedy family. Episode 416 is an interview with James D. Eugenio, and that was about the documentary JFK Revisited Through the Looking Glass. That goes through every piece of the investigation into the assassination. Episodes 745 and 746 is with J. Randy Taraborelli about the book Jackie, Public-Private Secret, an absolute must-read, perfect for a plane or a beach. We deep dived the life of Jackie Kennedy. Episode 1065 is about the life of Carolyn Bessette with author Elizabeth Beller. Episode 1089 is with Rosemarie Terenzio and Liz McNeil. They are authors of JFK Jr., an intimate oral biography, an intimate comprehensive look at the real man behind the myth. Rosemarie was JFK Jr.'s personal assistant. Episode 1369 is with J. Randy Taraborelli once again, and we talked about his father, JFK, Public-Private Secret, another great beach read or travel read. So my guest for today is the series showrunner of CNN Originals, American Prince JFK Jr., Rebecca Gitlitz, and I am thrilled to have her today. Here's my interview. Rebecca, we're back together.
Yes. Thank you for having me again.
This one is near and dear to my heart. And I have to ask you first how the concept came about, because there's so many projects about this family, but why this project now?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I made a film a couple years ago about Princess Diana. And so I have this deep fascination with people and stories that you think that you know, that you actually have only heard the surface value of. And so when Everwonder was developing this, John Adler came to me and he said, are you interested in making a JFK project? And I said, JFK Jr. And I said, I'm not sure. And he was like, well, we really want to root it in George magazine. And then that immediately became much more interesting to me, because this is sort of the lost part of his life. Everybody really focuses on the really shiny parts, but there's this real inherent drama of trying to find yourself and trying to find your way in a world where everybody thinks you should be a certain way. Everybody has these very preconceived notions of who you should be and what you should be. And so I thought that really examining something from the inside would be a great way to re-examine what people think they know about a story.
Part of it is so relatable, which at first you're going to think, okay, you're out of your mind, Kate. But how many people do we know that grew up in a family where they were expected to have a certain job or to live a certain place or to raise their families in such a way just because that's the way the family does it? So it's actually a pretty hard thing to go against the grain when your family has expectations of you, namely when you've got a mother figure who is still very much grieving the life that she had before her husband was assassinated and wants a certain life for you. And the rest of the world seems to be in agreement with that.
Yeah, there's this great dichotomy, right? Between his father, who was very tapped into the media, very much if you studied television or communication, one of the very first things you learn about is the 1960 debate and how television can really change the world, right? So his father was really into this media communication space. His mother, who is actually a photographer and an author, who also has these creative genes, completely shut it down, right? She didn't want it in the White House. Then she certainly didn't want it after her husband was assassinated, and then really battled with the media and intrusion into her life. And so the last thing that you would think that John would be was sort of this media tycoon, especially because there's this great irony, right? Of like, you're being followed by paparazzi and then you're creating a magazine about the inside lives of politicians. It has this like real inherent irony built in, but it is on the other side also a bit of the family business, right? Because this is what he was born into. And so I loved that there's all these levels of like, should he, shouldn't he, is he still, is he not, you know? And then you're right. Like lots of people we know are like, well, I'm going to be an orthodontist because my father is, and I'm going to go into politics. And so we all like sort of move into the family business, but are looking to carve out our own. But there's no person on the planet that is less relatable than John, right? And he wanted to be, he really did, but he's so singular in who he was, in that like we could never have another one, not even close.
Yeah.
Hey grown-ups, I'm Mindy Thomas.
And I'm Guy Raz.
And we're the host of the #1 podcast for curious kids, Wow in the World.
Mindy, can you believe we have our very own Wow in the World STEM toys?
I totally can't believe it, Guy Raz. 8 years ago, when we started making Wow in the World, we were on a mission to spread the latest wow discoveries in science and technology and innovation. And now we get to help kids discover these wows right at home?
That's right. From the ultimate high-flying air rocket to the light-up terrarium, there's something for every wowzer in your world to play and tinker with.
Grown-ups, you can find Wow in the World STEM toys available now at select Walmart locations or online at walmart.com. Shop the wow now.
How hard is it to kill a planet? Maybe all it takes is a little drilling, some mining, and a whole lot of carbon pumped into the atmosphere. When you see what's left, it starts to look like a crime scene.
Are we really safe? Is our water safe? You destroyed our town.
And crimes like that, they don't just happen.
We call things accidents. There is no accident. This was 100% preventable.
They're the result of choices by people. Ruthless oil tycoons, corrupt politicians, even organized crime. These are the stories we need to be telling about our changing planet. Stories of scams, murders, and cover-ups that are about us and the things we're doing to either protect the Earth or destroy it. Follow Lawless Planet on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to new episodes of Lawless Planet early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Okay, so when you approach this project, how do you segment it? You've got 3 episodes, but it's such a breadth of interviews you have to do and stories. And so how did you carve out those 3 episodes? How did you plan them out?
So I've thought that the John story was really, you need context into the era to like really understand what this story is about, because 1990 nostalgia is at an all-time high, right? Like you really needed to paint the world that he was living in this 90s, greed is good. Like, everybody's living large. It's the end of one era and really the birth of this era that we live in right now. It was the last of this like beautiful, simple time. And so I really wanted to root John in this cultural moment. And so I wanted to hone down interviews and really separate it into people that were specific to the story rather than just like historians and writers. And so I really wanted to focus on first person first. So Gary Ginsberg, who is our consulting producer, he was unbelievable because he was there the whole way. He was there with him through Brown and then at George and then literally till the very end of his life. You'll see in a later episode, the very last night of John's life was spent at a Yankees game trying to sell George magazine to the Murdochs.
Yeah.
So he is someone that like told the whole story, right? And Carol, who everybody knows and loves from her Real Housewife days, actually has this like deeply personal and emotional piece that also people don't know about, with her husband, Anthony, being sick at the same time, and how John was writing his Anthony's eulogy, and then they had to swap. Like, so I wanted to keep it simple in a way, but really understand where he came from. So the first episode, you have to explain his parents and how anyone even cares about him. And then you have to understand the magazine industry. And then you have to understand sort of why John and Carolyn have this lasting impact. Like, why are we still talking about this now? Why are, you just did a podcast last week with a writer who is focused on this. Like, Ryan Murphy came out with this new one. Like, why are we still talking about it? And I thought that, like, so each one has John's story rooted in these other larger contextual pieces.
So I always think it's important to, when you look at someone, you begin with their origin story. And his is so different because of the absence of his father. How much do you think that changed the lens through which he looked at life without having his father in his life, but everyone else seems to have touched him? And there's a part where you note that a lot of the memories that he have aren't really his own. It's because of a picture or a story. So how did that shape who he was as a young man and into adulthood?
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine, like, he's this little 3-year-old boy saluting his coffin, right? And in that moment, he becomes something to everyone, right? So imagine a life where everybody says, your father, and they lived this consciousness and he didn't. And so this is why I actually think George is so fascinating, is because, this was his way. I think about George as a constellation, right? And so each piece of George is connecting the dots of his father. It's a first-person exploration into who he was without really saying it, right? So the very first article, the very first magazine has an interview with George Wallace, right? Then they go to Cuba. Then they do the Marilyn Monroe cover. Like, there are all of these pieces. It's all about trying to make his own memory experience with a father that was memorialized, but that he didn't have. And so that's why George is so much bigger than just like this political magazine.
The media shaped so much of his first memories, but they were all narratives that were told by journalists and photographers and movie makers. And by creating this magazine, he's kind of taking ownership of the medium that in some ways controlled the way he looked at himself and his family. And I guess the overarching thing I thought of as I came to the last episode too, is just to jump ahead for a minute, is how much his father was robbed of the next chapter of his life. And he was coming to a point of his life where he was having deeper reflection. He was at a much better place with his wife, having sadly lost a child, kind of brought them together. He was thinking about a second term. He was just at that moment where he was transitioning into a new and better chapter of his life, a better informed person. And then you think of his son, who's 38, and he's at this game, and you can see in the body language that he knows that this meeting is not going the way he wants. And he's going to go visit his family. He's much like every other couple in the world that, you have ebbs and flows in your marriages. And he's probably thinking at that point too about moving into his next chapter. What's going to happen with this magazine? Am I going to start a family? And we're robbed of it, and he's robbed of it. So we're kind of stuck trying to figure out people who never had like a fully formed life. And I wondered, in the process of interviewing the people that you did who had such personal relationships with him, did they feel like that too? And had they imagined what he would have been like? Because it's easy for us to all assume that that's what he wanted for himself, was to run for office. But does anybody really know?
Yeah, I think they do know. I think he was going to run for office. Gary, feels pretty confident that he was going to start taking a run for governor. And so I do think that the overarching feeling is that he was robbed, right? And that in him being robbed of this next chapter, much like his father was, that we as a society are as well, right? Like he bore this mantle of hope in a way that is probably unfair, but is true, And so every single person that we sat down with, we said, what do you think life would be like if John was alive? They all said, well, he would have been president, or he would have this world wouldn't be as it was because we would have a real front runner for president right now. And so if that's fair or not is sort of irrelevant, because the mythology of John, both alive and larger than life being dead, is sort of, it doesn't matter because we've put all of our hopes and dreams the same way we did with his father. Like when he died, America lost a piece of hope, right? It's the same thing with John. And so as we get deeper and deeper into these political silos that we're in, John gets mythologized more. And I think that's the word, more and more, because, he would have saved us.
Mm-hmm. So then how did you approach showing both the burden of that public image, the heir apparent, and then his personal desire for independence?
I love the first clip that we start on, which is, that great Larry King interview where he says, it must be great to be the son of John Kennedy. And he's like, well, sometimes, I think that there's a feeling that people like celebrities, right? And when people say, well, don't be a celebrity if you don't want to be in a public eye, right? Like with John, he wasn't, right? He didn't choose to do anything. And this was the life he was given. And so I think it's unfair for society at large to say, well, he's rich and he's famous. Like, what could he be complaining about? But, I don't think that that's quite fair, because I think it was very difficult to be John Kennedy often. And I think we tried hard to show that internal struggle of wanting to be yourself, but feeling responsible for the family, and, trying to be your own person, but not being able to be your own person because there's no normal, right? And I keep coming back to this word myth because he wasn't a person. Like, even if you were standing right in front of him, you were in awe. I love the story in the second episode. I think it was the second episode about the DNC party in 1996, right? And he walks into the DNC. He hasn't done anything. He's in the second year of George. Oprah's there. Clinton's there. The political elite, and all anyone wants is John, right? And John has just started a magazine. He's like, if any one of us had done that, you'd be like mildly successful. So I just think that the burden of John was heavy. And I wanted to give him this very holistic view, because I think there were so many different parts of him that were hard while also privileged, right? And you could have both, and both can exist in the same time.
It's your man, Nick Cannon, and I'm here to bring you my new podcast, Nick Cannon at Night. I've heard y'all been needing some advice in the love department. So who better to help than yours truly? Nah, I'm serious. Every week, I'm bringing out some of my celebrity friends and the best experts in the business to answer your most intimate relationship questions. Having problems with your man? We got you. Catching feelings for your sneaky link? Let's make sure it's the real deal first. Ready to bring toys into the bedroom? Let's talk about it. Consider this a non-judgment zone to ask your questions when it comes to sex and modern dating in relationships, friendships, situationships, and everything in between. It's gonna be sexy, freaky, messy, and you know what? You'll just have to watch the show. So don't be shy. Join the conversation and head over to YouTube to watch Nick Cannon at Night, or subscribe on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Wanna watch episodes early and ad-free? Join Wondery Plus right now.
Compartmentalization. I thought about that too. There's a part where there's questions about the assassination, and he said, "Well, Uncle Bobby knows. He knows, but he has to go out in the world where people probably would have brought it up to him every single day." And of course, you note in the magazine, he kind of explores that narrative too. But how much of his life did he have to compartmentalize between his father's philandering, his assassination, his mother's personal life, even the lives of his cousins? How much of his life did he have to compartmentalize?
Yeah, that's such a good question, right? So Oliver Stone came out with JFK that while George was happening, and this is the part of having the magazine that's really tough, right? So he made a deal with Hachette that he would be the editor in chief, but he got full editorial control, which would 100% never happen today, right?
Right.
Which means that he's out there, as the face looking for advertisers, but also could pull stories at a dime, right? And so he goes out there, and JFK is the biggest movie, and he sits down with Oliver Stone, and they say, okay, but you can't ask any questions about the assassination, right? First question about the assassination, John walks up and leaves, right? Like the middle of George magazine, Bill Clinton starts, the Monica Lewinsky scandal hits. And so for someone who wants to be in media, right, you have to tell these stories. You have to be able to have this ruthless editor type to say, like, this is what we have to do. And there were parts where being a Kennedy was bigger than being John, right? Mm-hmm. And so you see that throughout the course of George, like with his cousins and writing that Adam and Eve. And so, John very firmly did not want to be the face of George, yet when his cousins start behaving badly and he has to write about it, he does it in a way where he's naked in the editor's page, right? So that takes the onus off them and onto, oh my God, John is naked on the cover. And so he was very smart, but also there was probably a lot of you protect your family, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the Kennedy way. And you saw that with John, that you protect the Kennedy way, except for when he wanted to do it, right? Like the Marilyn Monroe, Drew Barrymore cover is one of those really surprising things, right? Like, mm-hmm. So John also was a bit of a free spirit also, and was like, well, you said it before, like, as long as it's my narrative, I can do what I want.
It's funny though, I don't even think they had an affair. I've talked about it with J. Randy Taraborelli many times. There's no proof that JFK and Marilyn Monroe actually had an affair. It was probably somebody else. But yes, I wonder if that tugged at him too. Like these people have no clue, but they've run with this story that's not even accurate,
Well, yeah. I mean, how much do we actually know and how much do we actually not know, right? Tina Brown had this incredible theory, right? I asked her about the Kennedy curse, right? And she had this incredible theory, and she was like, I don't think there is a curse. I think that they are just so privileged that they put themselves in these tricky situations, right? And they also live so differently than we do because they're flying planes and there's teleskiing in Aspen. And so it's not a curse. It's almost like
the rules don't apply to them because they're so privileged.
Yes. They're too big to fail, right?
Yeah, like Michael Kennedy dies because he skis into a tree. I don't think he had a helmet on. Right. And why, I think he jumped out of a helicopter. So there are freak accidents, but then there are if you constantly are putting I wouldn't fly my own plane, forget the weather, any of those things. This is, so I loved Tina Brown's take on that. It's not actually a curse. But you know what? You're right. I know somebody that knew him and they had an opportunity to fly on a plane with him too, and they didn't. It was stormy weather this one specific time, and they just had a gut feeling not to do it. It just reminds me that there were a lot of people that felt like he flew too close to the sun.
Yeah, and I have no idea. And, Gary swears up and down, and I believe everything Gary says, that no one told him not to fly that night. But I'm not sure that that's completely relevant to the larger risk-taking behavior that is the Kennedy. One of the people we have in there is the psychobiographer. And I did find him really fascinating he calls everything the iceberg, right? So you see John up here And then you understand John only through this iceberg that exists below him, right? And so it's like a chipping away. And that's what George was. It's like a chipping away to find yourself. And so if for generations you're told that, you do not fail, the Kennedys do not fail.
Right.
Like, imagine that chipping through your brain.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, in dating, like every woman's in love with you. And I'm sure that that created a lot of their quarrels, is that she's the one person who's checking him. A man who goes through life unchecked has a hard time coping when someone finally says, like, you're wrong. This is the way you should do it. You can't do things this way.
And not only that, but people are taking you for a ride, right? Like, those are some of my favorite Carolyn stories that she, people would call her really cold. And this is like, I could go off on a full tangent on how this is how women are treated versus men. And I remember at one of our first story meetings, I sat down and I said, well, yeah, because she was a woman. Like, that's why she was treated so badly. Because I'd been down this road with Diana of like, do you understand what they're screaming at her on the street and how like, they're respectful of John, but they're not respectful of her. And I just thought it was so amazing that there's no interviews of her, that there's no speaking. You can't find anything.
It was her one little way of being in control.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just, you see it now with the different ways. And, if you look at Meghan and Kate and that whole royal fight, Kate never says anything. And so the narratives can spin, but it's not about her. Right. And so there's this real gift of silence that I think she had that must have been really hard, because I don't know that I could have been silent, but I thought that was really a power move by her.
Absolutely. Well, that leads me to this question. Did you stumble across anything, insight, stories during the production that you felt really shifted your thoughts or changed the series at all?
Carol changed everything for me. I didn't know that she would do this. She said many times that she didn't want to do things anymore, but she did because it was about George and not about like trying to drum up drama that didn't exist. And I spent a lot of time listening to her and not asking. I did my job. I asked questions, but listening first. And I spent time on the phone with her, and I felt like that reinformed or built the way I wanted to tell the story, because I wanted to tell these emotional pieces rather than just like this biography of a person.
Yeah.
And so the way she talks about Carolyn and the way she talks about that summer and the way she talks about Anthony and John and these deeply personal moments, I think what I tried to do was make them human rather than a myth. Right? Like the John doesn't exist, but this real person who hurt and felt and tried, they did exist. And so I think Carol changed everything for me.
And then lastly, what do you want the viewers to walk away? What do you want them to have stick to them about John F. Kennedy Jr.? Like, what is the one thing that you hope they walk away thinking?
That he is more than a little boy who saluted his father's casket, right? And he is also not everything that he could have been, right? He really did die right at this inflection point of his life, and he only got one chapter or two chapters. This little boy who people thought they knew, but he should get a lot more credit for George and the sort of foresight that politics and culture were going to clash in a way that our lives would be consumed with, that I don't think he does. And I think that's a shame. I had never even heard of George when I started this.
What?
Yeah. It's like in QAnon's hands now, which is a whole other amazing part of this story. No one owns George. George is like a phantom.
Wow. Yeah.
You can't find the issues.
I got to crack mine out.
Yeah.
Wow. Do I need to like put this in some sort of safe in my house? Or are people going to come try to collect it? Wow. Well, I love this topic and I love everything that you do. I'm excited to hear about all the next projects that you work on because you will circle back with me later this year on another unnamed project that we will get to in due time. Now, the first episode aired on August 9th. The second one airs Saturday, August 16th. The third one on Saturday, August 23rd. I was so excited to watch every single episode, and I'm so grateful for you and for your team. Tell everybody how many people worked on this and how long it took.
It was actually it was a quick runway. We started about a year ago, and we had a pretty solid team. We had a great showrunner. We had a great senior producer, a guy named Spencer, who I work with all the time, who just is like one of the best investigative producers in the game. We brought on a lot of, I like to run my productions as what I call a teaching hospital. So we have senior members and then we bring in a lot of new people all the time. I never have the same full edit crew. I always bring in someone new and APs to just make sure that we're always teaching and people are always learning and different people get opportunities all the time because, we gotta use our seat at the table for good.
Mm. Well, tell everybody where they can follow you.
I am poorly on X, so don't look there. But I do have an Instagram, but it's mostly my kids and not very exciting. But Kate, you've inspired me. I'm going to be online more. I have a company. I'm going to make a website. I'm going to do a better job. So you can find me soon after Kate told me to. Yeah.
I'm on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank my great guest, Rebecca, and thank you again for subscribing to the show and for leaving a 5-star review. Please join the Facebook group, Reality Life with Kate Casey. You can get my What to Watch list every week, which will give you a list of all the reality shows and documentaries that you want to watch by going to katecasey.substack.com. Again, that weekly list comes out every Monday. And then also bonus episodes you can get on Apple Podcast and Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Kate Casey. And then also follow me on social media. My Instagram is @KateCaseyCA, TikTok, it's Kate Casey, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at Kate Casey. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode. I've got an interview with Emily Simpson from Real Housewives of Orange County.